Imagine setting out for a routine fishing trip, one you've done dozens of times before, expecting to be home by sunset. Imagine thinking the biggest challenge of your day might be hauling in a good catch or making it back before the weather turns. Now imagine waking up the next day hundreds of miles off course, trapped in a tiny fiberglass boat with no engine, no radio, no anchor, no paddles, and no way home. And now imagine that moment stretching into weeks, then months, then more than a year. This is the unbelievable true story of José Salvador Alvarenga, the fisherman who survived 438 days drifting across the Pacific Ocean. It is one of the longest confirmed solo survival stories in human history, a tale of fear, hunger, resilience, tragedy, hallucinations, and the strange, fragile line between life and death on the open sea. And today, we're going to tell it from start to finish. The man behind the legend, before he became a symbol of human endurance, Alvarenga was simply a fisherman who worked out of the small coastal town of Costa Azul, Mexico. He wasn't famous, he wasn't wealthy, he wasn't even considered unusual by the people who knew him. He was just a reliable, experienced fisherman who spent most of his days chasing big catches far off the coastline. To him, the sea wasn't dangerous. It was familiar, dependable, maybe even comforting. On November 17th, 2012, he grabbed his usual gear, met up with a young crewman named Ezequiel Cordoba, and set off on what was supposed to be a simple 2-day shark fishing run. He had made trips like this hundreds of times before. Nothing suggested this one would be different until everything changed. The storm? A few hours after they left shore, the weather turned. A storm moved in much faster than expected, and within minutes, the wind picked up, the sky turned dark, and the waves began smashing into their tiny 23-foot boat. Normally, storms were an inconvenience. Fishermen got caught in them occasionally, but they usually passed. This storm, however, was different. The waves were so violent, they stripped away their fishing gear. The wind twisted their boat around like a toy, and then the worst possible blow, the boat's engine drowned and went dead. With their outboard motor destroyed, the radio malfunctioning, and the storm pushing them farther and farther out to sea, the two men realized the truth. They weren't in a bad situation. They were in a nightmare. The first days adrift, when the storm finally calmed, the men found themselves completely lost. No engines, no anchor, no way to paddle. The ocean current had full control of their fate. They tried to signal for help, but they were already too far out for anyone to see them. Their radio flickered long enough for them to send a distress call, but they couldn't give their exact coordinates. A rescue was impossible. For the moment, they still had hope. They had some fish left, a few basic supplies, a cooler full of bait. Maybe someone would find them. Maybe a plane or a passing vessel would spot them before things got worse. But things did get worse quickly. The mental battle, as the days passed, the psychological strain grew heavier. The horizon became a prison wall, endless, predictable, empty. The ocean is loud, but it can feel eerily silent when nothing changes day after day. That silence started to play tricks on their minds. They hallucinated boats that weren't there. They imagined voices calling to them. They talked to imaginary people just to fill the emptiness. In extreme isolation, the mind becomes both a companion and an enemy. And the longer they drifted, the more the line between reality and imagination blurred. Cordoba's decline. Ezequiel Cordoba, the younger fisherman, struggled the most. He wasn't as experienced with the sea, and mentally, the isolation hit him hard. His hunger worsened. His hope faded. At one point, he refused to drink turtle blood or eat raw bird meat, insisting that the food was cursed or contaminated. He began to starve. Despite Alvarenga's attempts to feed him, encourage him, and keep him alive, Cordoba's body couldn't fight anymore. One morning, after weeks of struggle, he became silent, and still, the worst had happened. Alvarenga had lost the only other human being in his world. For hours, maybe longer, he refused to believe Cordoba was dead. He spoke to him, tried to wake him, shook him, begged him, but eventually, the truth became too clear. Overwhelmed with grief, he committed the hardest act of his entire ordeal. He pushed the only companion he had left into the sea. Survival alone. Now completely alone, Alvarenga faced a new level of psychological torment. There was no one to talk to, no one to help fish, no one to watch the horizon with. The silence became a living thing, a pressure that settled into his chest. He began talking to himself. He imagined conversations with family members. He built routines to keep his mind focused on survival. Every day was the same: search for birds, catch fish by hand, collect rainwater, clean the boat, protect the food, and keep hope alive. But hope was harder to hold on to as days turned into months. The journey across the Pacific, unbeknownst to him, ocean currents were carrying the tiny boat on a massive journey. Over the course of more than a year, he drifted thousands of miles across the Pacific Ocean. He passed near shipping lanes, but never close enough for anyone to see him. He drifted through storms and scorching heat. He lost weight, his hair grew long, his beard grew wild, but somehow he stayed alive. The false alarms. Every few weeks, he thought he saw land, a shape on the horizon, a shadow, a cloud he convinced himself was a mountain. Each time, his heart rose and then fell again when the shape dissolved into nothing. False hope can hurt more than no hope at all. But then something finally changed. The real land in sight. After more than 400 days at sea, Alvarenga saw something on the horizon that didn't fade. It grew larger. It had color. It had shape. It wasn't a cloud. It wasn't a wave. It was land, real land. He used the last of his strength to paddle with his hands, guiding the boat toward what looked like a small island. Finally, waves pushed his boat onto a coral reef and flipped it. He crawled to shore, collapsed, and lay there until two islanders found him. They thought he might be a ghost. No one could look like that and still be alive. But he was alive, barely. Rescue and return. When the world learned what had happened, media outlets rushed to document his story. Doctors confirmed he had all the physical signs of long-term ocean survival. He had lost extreme weight. He had vitamin deficiencies. His skin bore the scars of sun and salt. And yet somehow he had survived what almost no one else in history ever had: controversy and doubt. As with any unbelievable story, some people question whether it was true. They asked how one man could survive so long, how he navigated, how he didn't lose his mind entirely. But oceanographers, survival experts, and investigators studied his route and found it entirely possible. His story matched the ocean currents. His body showed the signs. The timeline fit perfectly. And no one else has ever come forward claiming to have survived his ordeal for him. In the end, the general consensus was clear. José Salvador Alvarenga survived the impossible. Life after survival? After returning home, his life changed dramatically. He wrote a book. He gave interviews. He struggled with trauma. He struggled with fame. And he struggled with the haunting memories of Cordoba, the young man he couldn't save. Survival is not always the end of the struggle. Sometimes it's only the beginning. Yet, despite everything, he remains a symbol of resilience, a reminder that the human will to live is stronger than we can ever imagine. Which brings us to Alvarenga's story is more than just a fishing tale or a survival story. It's a testament to the extremes of human endurance. It forces us to ask, what would we do in his position? Could we survive a week at sea, a month, a year? And how much of survival comes from strength and how much from pure will? In the end, his story is simple but powerful. As long as you keep fighting, you're not done yet. And sometimes, the greatest victories come from refusing to give up when everything else says you should. This has been the incredible, unbelievable, and fully documented true story of the man who survived 438 days lost at sea.